Hey everybody, Tim Albrecht here, and welcome to this week's episode of the Ask a YFP CFP segment of the Your Financial Pharmacist Podcast, where we answer questions from you, the YFP community, to be answered by one of YFP Planning's fee-only certified financial planners. Before we jump into today's question, I want to give a shout out to YFP Planning's team that makes this segment possible. YFP Planning offers fee-only, high-touch, comprehensive financial planning that is customized to the pharmacy professional. So whether you want to optimize your investing plan, pay off student loans, or simply build a solid financial plan, YFP Planning will help get your income working for you rather than the other way around. You can learn more and book a free discovery call by visiting yfpplanning.com. Again, that's yfpplanning.com. All right, Tim, this week's question comes from a lunch and learn that I did this spring with a group of faculty and staff at a college of pharmacy. And the question is, I already cut corners with my budget, skipping the lattes, packing the lunches, but it's still not enough. What should I consider now? What are your thoughts?
Yeah, so I think right now, like everyone is getting hit hard with inflation. You know, my wife and I, Shay, we're just talking about this, how like the grocery bill has just continued to see, creep in overall bill. And I'm sure you can feel this too, Tim, with 4 boys. So I think what people sometimes look at from a budgeting perspective, they look at this as a one-sided equation, meaning that it's all expenses, right? Don't buy the latte, packing the lunch, make sure you pack the lunch, those types of things. But I think that it's important for us to look at, both sides of the equation. So the other side would be kind of growing, more of the inflows, the top line revenue. So, and that could be like a very unpopular opinion. And I understand that because like when we talk to clients about that, sometimes it's like, well, I don't want to add any more shifts to like, me working in the pharmacy or anything like that. But I think where also pharmacists kind of get it twisted too, is that, they look at what they make as a pharmacist in like an hourly rate. And they're like, well, if I can't make that amount of money, then I'm not going to consider it at all. So, this answer is really look at the expenses. And I think there's always, even if you've examined it already, I think there's always room to examine it further. Sometimes just doing a cleanse of things like memberships and things that have piled up over years. Make it look at, unnecessary memberships and look at, ways to cancel those. One of the big things that I'm a big proponent of unsubscribing to like retailer emails. So you wake up in the morning and you might look at your email and there's, 5 different deals or sales that, are enticing you to part ways with your hard-earned money. I think avoiding the whole concept of, but I deserve it. Sometimes that can lead down a very dangerous path. I would even look at like deductibles, say on like auto or homeowners insurance, where we have open enrollment season coming up, usually at the fourth quarter. So, if you're younger, healthier, don't go to the doctors much, no matter what your age is. Like, are you paying for more of a Cadillac health plan that could put more money into your paycheck, but maybe have a more out of pocket if you do go to the doctor. Things like that I think is really important to examine. And there's a lot more. But I think the inflow side, growing kind of the top line revenue, are you doing that? So, the question was stated as like, hey, I'm doing everything I can. But are you considering, putting yourself out there to do things like Airbnb or again, taking extra shifts, maybe moonlighting some? I think some people will say like, oh, I can't do Uber because, I'm above that or whatever. Do you have some creative talent, whether it's photography or something like that you can utilize? Even like, are there ways to put your PharmD to use? So whether that be like medical write-in, or I'm sure if you go onto like Upwork, which is a site that we've used to kind of hire contractors, I'm sure there is work out there that, could use like a PharmD's expertise. Could it be teaching, more? Obviously, I think this came from faculty, so maybe that isn't necessarily on the docket. Web design, things like that you might have an interest in and that you're good at. Is there a way to like monetize that? So that's I think the challenge, Tim, is I think is to challenge you further. And again, not just look at the expense side of the equation, but are there ways that you can generate additional revenue to kind of make up the gap? And sometimes that can be an eye rolling inducement, to be like, I'm working as it is a lot, especially we can see that in academia. But you can only cut your expenses so much until you have to start, you're kind of forced to look at the other side of it. But there could be even things like, asking for a raise. If you're building a brand as a pharmacist, are there ways to have affiliate deals? I've seen some people, earn a good amount of cash just kind of getting rid of like stuff. So like garage sales. So there's all kinds of things like that you can get creative with. But sometimes it's just being comfortable, being uncomfortable, and sometimes that's putting yourself out there to kind of work in a different capacity. But I'm a big proponent of that. I think it introduces a level of hustle that maybe you don't see just by focus on expenses. But yeah, I think examining the expenses is important. But again, I think looking for additional ways to generate cash. I think having that in your back pocket in any sense. We did a recent recording where it's like we don't know what the economic climate is going to look like. So if you can diversify your income streams in any way, I would be a big proponent of that. So that would be my thought on that question.
Yeah, Tim, I love the creativity, and to your point, I think we can always be scrubbing expenses periodically. I think that's a healthy habit, but at the end of the day, there's a limit to that, right? And so, once we've done that hard work, it sounds like that largely has been done here in the question. What's some of the creative thinking we can do on the income side of the equation? And I'm writing an article right now on side hustle ideas, and we've got a blog post on the website that just is throwing out a bunch of different ideas of ways pharmacists may be able to earn some extra income. And I think we have 19 or 20 different ideas. We've featured many stories on the podcast before. And, the idea is that you might look at some of those and be like, yep, that's me. Or it just might get you thinking about, oh, I hadn't thought about that. I hadn't thought about, a different idea. And it could be a clinical skill that you monetize, and it could be a non-clinical skill. We have pharmacists that have pursued passion in photography and art and other areas that haven't necessarily monetized their clinical expertise, but many others that certainly have done that as well. So, I think some of that creative juice and energy is powerful. And I would encourage folks, one of the benefits I think of, some of these extra types of activities is sometimes the motivation and the inspiration that can come through, the creativity and the hustle phase. Now, certainly I don't think anybody wants to be grinding it out for long stretches of time. But often there can be some significant momentum and energy, that can come from some of these activities. It's giving me flashbacks, Tim. I mean, there was a day, right? You were doing Rover, you were doing Uber, you were doing, scooters and other things. And I think that, often that sometimes it's because we want to move goals forward, but I think there can be some energy that can come from that as well.
Yeah. And I think I think if you think about impact, if you add up a lot of those examples about like packing lunch and lattes, like those are all good and they can move the needle. But I think if you can, find a revenue stream that, I guess what I'm saying is I think growing a revenue stream has more bang for your buck, versus, trying to eliminate 30 different little things in the budget. So again, I'm a big proponent of looking at both, but I think, if you can find an impactful revenue stream, I think that cures a lot of ills faster. But yeah, I mean, when I launched my business, that was, I had a runway to work with, but I needed to for this to work in my mind, I needed to find creative ways to have more money come in the door until I can kind of right myself, because going from a salary to basically no salary, it can be a very scary thing. So yeah, part of that was for survival. Part of that was also like, for me, it was also like testing that out and saying, hey, like I'm recommending you consider this because I've done it before and it works.
Yeah.
So it's also kind of proof of concept. So yeah, I think, these are healthy things. I think sometimes people get frustrated and they're like, oh, like, I'm supposed to be this in my life, at this stage in my life, and I'm not. But,
Hmm.
I think most people are experiencing the same thing that, this person asking the question is experiencing, because, it's, the just prices have gone up a lot.
Yeah.
And, I don't think sometimes I think it can be a source of embarrassment or things like that. I don't look at that at all. I just look at it as
Yep.
a cyclical thing of, belt tightening that everybody has to go through from time to time. So, yeah, look at both sides of the equation and go from there.
Yeah, and I think, given the times, as you mentioned too, I think we need to step back and remember that we're hopefully not in a long-term, high inflationary period where it's hitting us at many different angles. And we know pharmacist income, for the large part have gone up, but haven't, gone up 9%, as many of our expenses have over the last year. And so I think sometimes, we got to step back, give ourselves a little bit of grace and have some patience as well, that, if we can work some of these steps on the expenses as well as the income side, hopefully this too will pass and we can begin to get some of that momentum back. And one other thing I just want to bring back up, because I'm so glad you mentioned it, is I think we often talk about, extra types of work or side hustles to earn income, but we don't necessarily think as often about advocating ourselves with, asking for raises, salary negotiation types of things. And, we covered this on episode 219 of the podcast. We'll link to that in the show notes. But especially knowing this question came from academia, and I spent over a decade in academia. I think academia is notorious for not necessarily, adjusting compensation and pay. But certainly I have seen success in my experiences working with other faculty members where when there was some initiation and ask for it, there was some forward progress there. So, don't overlook that piece. If we can, trim some of the expenses, we can earn some additional income. We also could potentially increase our salary. There's definitely more than one angle that we could tackle this. So great question, and looking forward to seeing how this plays out for this individual member. But love the opportunity to work with this group of faculty and staff with a lunch and learn this spring. If you have a question that you'd like to have featured on an upcoming episode, you can shoot us an email, info@yourfinancialpharmacist.com. You can also submit your question via recording at yourfinancialpharmacist.com/ask YFP. And as we wrap up this week's episode, an important reminder that the content is provided for informational purposes only, is not intended to provide, and should not be relied on for investment or any other advice. For more information on this, you can visit yourfinancialpharmacist.com/disclaimer. Thanks for listening and have a great rest of your week.